Are you ready for the great event of the year? Tune in as we talk 420, legalization, and cannabis education.
Legal cannabis was a $10 billion industry last year, and experts say it's going to be worth over $20 billion by the end of next year. And the big question is this: how do normal people like us, who aren't part of the 1%, how do we take the money in our pockets and participate in the largest transfer of wealth? My name is Charles. I'm joining Roz McCarthy and Eric Range of Canna Talk with Roz, and we explore those answers.
It has been a crazy week, but a great week. And we have an awesome panel guest on today. I got my brother E Range. He's down in South Florida looking like he's about to go out to the beach and make it hang. Hey, E Range. Eric, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm sorry it's a little bright right now. I'm still in a little bit of a transit, but glad we're here for another episode of Canna Talk with Roz. Looking forward to our guest today and some good conversation.
Absolutely. So listen, guys, our conversation over the past couple of weeks have been talking about the ecosystem of cannabis. And more importantly, we're talking about the fact that we have a 420 is coming. It's right close to us, April 20th. It's the global celebration of cannabis, the plant. There's so much advocacy. There's so much celebration. There's so much community that happens around 420. If I get invited to another event, I may just pop because there's so much going on.
I'm telling you, we got to find a way to clone ourselves.
Exactly. I have some incredible people here, and I want to introduce, and then, of course, my brother Charles Wu is here with us, and I'm going to tell you about Charles and why he's here, because Charles is going to be your mouthpiece to ask the questions for those investors who are thinking like, man, I want to invest in their product and invest in what they're doing. So first we have Jose Rosado, who's here with us, and he's in Sunshine, Florida. We have Ms. Carolyn Phillips, who is with us, who is the founder and the executive director of the National Cannabis Festival in Washington, D.C. Thank you, my sister. Thank you and blessings. And then we have Ms. Tiffany Yarde, who is a marketing guru. She has developed a brand called Shaki, which is a cannabis-infused liqueur. She's an event planner, I guess I should say planner, but she also has, as from an entrepreneurial standpoint, providing events that focus around the cannabis industry. So I'm so happy to have you guys. Jose, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and about EndoSesh.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Jose Rosado. I am the founder of greenwise.tv, and EndoSesh is an event we do. This is going to be our second year here in Gainesville. It's an awesome time. It's really an educational event that we have here, but we also include music, and we also include a few other things.
Hey, and Jose, check your levels again. So we're so happy to have you, Jose. We're going to learn more about EndoSesh and what you do. And Ms. Carolyn Phillips, introduce yourself and tell us about yourself and your event that's happening on 420.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so excited to be talking to you. I produce a National Cannabis Festival in Washington, D.C. We're going into our fourth year and expecting 20,000 guests at RFK Stadium. We are the largest ticketed cannabis gathering on the East Coast and the only one owned and run by women of color. So we're really proud of that. But National Cannabis Festival is a celebration of progress on legalization of cannabis in Washington, D.C. and around the country. We think of ourselves sort of like a rock the vote event for the cannabis community. People can come and hear a great concert. They can shop among our exhibitors. They can sit and learn in one of 4 different education pavilions, participate in contests, and do everything you would really find at a music festival, plus cannabis. So we're excited to be highlighting the work of our 32 nonprofit partners this year and to be talking about this important subject as federal legalization is on the horizon on 420.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to learn more about Carolyn and how she started this. It has become a national phenomenon in regards to, I learned about it last year and didn't realize a woman of color was behind this vision, and it is truly vision. So thank you so much for being on with us. Sure. And Ms. Tiffany Yarde, please share a little bit about yourself, where you're located and about your brand, and also what you do in this space.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Tiffany Yard. I'm the owner of a wine education platform. I'm a wine specialist and author. And so as someone who loves the grape, the varietal, I naturally gravitated to the cannabis space because there are just so many parallels by way of the learning of cannabis. And if you become a serious consumer, there's so much science, so much things to learn that, and again, adding that to your daily life just made sense to, again, build enjoyment, to build a sense of community among others. Again, so many parallels with wine that it's now naturally gravitated to me. And I make liqueurs, and I've been doing that for many years. While in my travels through West Africa, I stumbled upon a wonderful beverage that was cannabis infused and brought it back to the States. So we're currently in pre-production, working with a few manufacturing houses to get us online in Nevada State. So it's been quite a journey for me. But again, education's always been my thing. I spent a long time teaching a lot of different subjects around business development and wine. And so this has been a really, really great synergy for me. And it's been a wild ride for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me ask you a question. You have a brand, and so you're going to be talking about around the 420. When you're looking at your brand, how do you then take it from a brand perspective, and then into into an event perspective where you're getting people an opportunity to learn more about your brand? It's not even maybe tasting, but it's just how do you create this environment of education, of sharing that made you say, okay, on 420, I want to do something special, and talk a little bit about it.
For sure. So I come from the B2B space. And so when you're not B2C, which is direct consumer contact, what you have are places for business development that happen, say, around dining tables with executives, private curated events where folks can feel, less inclined to the formalities of a formal networking event, but be able to really build meaningful connection over time. And so in the B2B space, it's very common, whether it's, industries across tech versus consumer product goods, all those kind of things require, a sense of an orchestra of, say, 4 or 5 events for a year where there's seeming people that you have been targeting actually get together in the same room systematically over time and build relationship. And in the legal world, for example, it takes about 18 months to build business between the day you get a business card to the day of your first engagement. Should I say your first invoice you can charge. And in that 18 months, what happens? A lot of events, a lot of courting. And so much of those skills can be reapplied to all types of brands when trying to build connection with, say, consumer bases, or should I say, more specifically, the consumers that would buy your product. And so much of that we transferred over into the Shoki experience, which is mostly about education, mostly about just destigmatization, which is kind of the biggest conversation. When you've been a professional as long as I have, you've heard all the stories of, don't be a stoner, and, all these negative vibes that come along with the cannabis experience and what it's been known as historically. And of course, then going a step further, how long and the narratives have been pretty much criminalizing those who do use it. And so seeing that change, being part of that change has been definitely a newfound passion of mine.
Well,
Tiffany, if I could, you mentioned something there just then in terms of it. And we on this show, we try to make sure that folks understand what it really takes to get a business started and then to make that business sustainable. You said, I believe you said 18 months or so.
And that's just one industry. Yeah, right. People really don't get, when you think about big ticket items, the amount of courting that's required for someone to really adopt your idea, want to follow you, want to engage with you, and then ultimately want to support you, that takes time. And in that time, there are things that you can do. I spent a lot of time in the B2B space, so folks would hire me to help orchestrate those opportunities to build connection. And doing that for so many years, you recognize that there are themes, events where folks are doing the same thing together, being able to send really great gifts for certain, for good example. We call it in this space the EG, the extraordinary gift. So if there's someone that you're targeting and say they love comic books, sending them a small pass to say Comic-Con or something, that's a great way to build connection, and it's a light lift. With that said, being thoughtful about the consumers that you're with. So those who are interested in, say, just CBD, those who are interested to learn more about the general aspects of the industry, you curate those type of topics and target the people that would come. And of course, that just takes time, getting to know who you're targeting and creating events where folks would enjoy themselves. The last thing you want is someone who just cares about getting high all day coming to an event that's meant for industry, connecting. So being thoughtful of who your audience is and what they want, and being able to meet them and meet their needs where they are. That's really just takes some practice, some research, seeing who's doing it right, and then seeing if you can improve upon it.
And that really what you're talking about is, I guess your cost of customer acquisition, right? How much is it going to cost you to obtain that client, that customer who's going to buy from you that first time, but then more importantly, who's going to come back, right?
Yeah.
So talk about,
Right on.
and any one of you guys can talk about this, because I think each of you have a model that's built on, getting that person through the door the first time, but then, how do you get them back over? So if you guys could talk about, how do you come up with your customer acquisition cost, or, how do you track that as you're going along? For the individuals who are out there, again, when you talk about what are your margins, well, cost of your obtaining your client or your customer is a part of that. So if you guys could touch on that, how did you come up with your cost per customer, or what are some of the things you have in place to track that?
I can talk about that a little bit. So when I was building National Cannabis Festival, I probably went about this the wrong way, but I'll tell you what I did, and then you all can decide if it works for what you're working on.
Well, the wrong way becomes the right way.
Well, I hope so, yeah. So with the festival, when we started it, what we were trying to do was really disrupt this pattern of really high price events in the cannabis industry. So we actually started by building out what our expected revenue streams would be. So I started with the price of the ticket. So this is super backwards. Normally people figure out the budget and then they base, the ticket on that. Like, how much is it going to cost me to market this event, get people in the door? How much do I have to pay for insurance? How much is it going to cost to build this stage and hire this talent? So we sort of went about it the opposite way. We knew that we wanted to have an event that people from all 8 wards could afford to attend. So we made the base ticket price $35. And then we started thinking about what relationships we had with local businesses and national businesses, and thought about what we could potentially approach them for on sponsorship. So once I had my revenue idea in place, then I figured out what I would be able to do with that money and what kind of a festival I could put on. So granted, that's absolutely a backwards way of thinking about it. When you're putting on a major event,
Smart.
yeah, when you're putting on a major event, you're normally thinking about, as far as investment per customer, how much am I spending on marketing to get to each consumer? How much am I paying to insure this event? How much is my talent going to cost? And how many tickets do I need to sell to cover that person's performance fee? But I have found, looking at it that way, we can't really get the kind of event that we were trying to put together, which is one that was a bit more accessible. So like I said, we went about it a backwards way. It has worked out for us, but I do recommend that other people look at the full budget and break it down from there when they're thinking about how to produce an event or bring in a customer.
Right. So sharing this with you guys, it means that you go and you find an event budget template. You take an event budget template. If you're going to do a symposium, if you're thinking about doing a one day symposium, a concert, an expo, what we're trying to explain here is that the cannabis industry presents opportunities outside of touching plant. The ecosystem, we need Tiffany, we need Jose, we need Carolyn to do this, because sometimes the connectivity to the industry, we all are cannabis people, but I don't always want to talk to cannabis people. I want to be able to touch people who are mainstream. So if you were to look at Carolyn's, tell us, like, did you know initially that you want to do mainstream artists, people that they knew that you wanted to do this big production, or did it start small and then gradually has it got to a point where you have a Ludacris and a Biz Markie a part of your lineup there?
Well, in year one, we had De La Soul headline, which is, a well-known act for a lot of people that love hip-hop music.
Yeah.
I think going in, I knew that in order to create an event worthy of being called a national cannabis festival, that it needed to be a big event. So going in, I had a general idea that I needed to pull together enough cash to buy a 1 to 2 bedroom condo in DC to pull off this event. And I think that's really something that's important for producers to understand. Putting on events is not inexpensive. There are costs in there that you won't see and some that you won't see until your final week. So you need to be prepared when you're producing an event of any scale, really, not to necessarily see profit for your first 3 years. Events like these require a lot of reinvestment. They require a lot of relationship building so that you can do a lot of things in trade and also, you know, earn extra benefits for your attendees. So I think that would be thing one. Start with your budget and think about large infrastructure. So is that tents? Is that fencing? Is that secure? Think about how are you keeping people safe? You're going to need insurance for that. Once you get past that and thinking if you can afford those basic pieces, now start thinking about talent. I think a lot of people make an error when they're thinking about concerts where the first expense they think about and they think is going to be their largest expense is the talent. And for some events, that is true. When you have, you know, like Migos or like Cardi B headlining, you're spending a lot of money to put them on the stage. But think about what you need to put on an event that represents the industry well, and think about how you're going to keep your attendees safe. After that, start thinking about the frills and the bows, like cool signage, flashy screens on the stage, and performers. And the other thing that I think is really important when you're thinking about producing an event, if you are going to take money from sponsors or exhibitors, some are very small companies for whom your event is one of the most important marketing opportunities of the year for them, be very serious and intentional about how you're going to get that audience to your event. Because you may be high-fiving your team that we've raised all of this money. But if only 1,000 people show up to an event that you've marketed as being 10,000 people, then you haven't done right by your sponsors and exhibitors, and you may be really hurting their bottom line.
Absolutely. Hey,
Jose, and you won't get those people back next year as well.
I'm sorry?
I said, and you won't get those sponsors back over the next years. I think you're going to take it in another direction, but I wanted to bring Jose in really quick in regards to, because I know with IndoSesh, you guys worked on a lot of sponsors up front, you know, and a lot of partners. You guys really, you know, brought a lot to bear, a lot of the Florida folks, you know, who have businesses who, you know, again, as Carolyn said, this would be an opportunity for them to get their brand or their product in front of people, and talk about what your thought process was and who you targeted for your sponsors, and how you know, what was the conversation? What was the value you offered them in order to, you know, spend money on your event?
Yeah, so definitely. I have a real unique situation. I actually pivoted out of the entertainment and film world and music world into the cannabis world. So I've been pretty much doing shows for about 20 years. So I understood the importance of the relationship building, and building those relationships with not only sponsors, but with partners. As Caroline said, building those relationships, being willing to sacrifice that sponsorship fee so that you have a partner that can help with marketing. And also it gives us an opportunity to choose which causes we really want to work with. You know, there's so many causes in this cannabis space, but by creating these partnerships where we don't charge certain people, you know, it helps us build a relationship with them, and it also helps them message out. So, you know, like Caroline said, we don't see any foreseeable profit with this event. This event is more for the community of North Florida, and also the industry people that, you know, maybe you don't want to go to the big, you know, festival event with 10,000 people. You come to Gainesville during 420 weekend. We actually have events planned starting on Thursday. So any of those companies or sponsors, if they come into town early, we have different events. A lot of people don't know, but Florida has a very rich cannabis history and culture. From the 60s with Gainesville Green, all the way to the fact that we have 3 dispensaries here in this community, and we have 3 more that are moving in within the next 6 months. We also have EVO Labs here. We also have groups like the Smart Collective and groups like Swamp City, who have the nation's first CBD lounge. That's all here in Gainesville. So we're trying to build something unique with the unique tools we already have. And as far as fundraising and sponsorships, yeah, that's a constant. Just it's more or less about the relationships, and we've been fortunate to have great relationships with great companies, and basically, yeah, hopefully in the future it will pay off. But the payoff is just enough having all these great people come to Gainesville on 420, which, as all of you know in this industry, that's kind of like one of our holidays. So it's a great time, and yeah, that's how we do it.
That's awesome. And you have it all ages. What was your premise behind all ages as an educational event, and what do you do for the children that come with their parents?
So in the inside, we have a speaker area. So we have presentations all day. So Heartwood Soundstage is a premier soundstage here in Gainesville. They do several large music festivals there every year. So we will have a few bands playing outside, but the main focus of the event is what's going on in the inside, in the soundstage. We're also going to be live streaming the whole event on greenwise.tv and also all our social media. But yeah, as far as the educational, we plan to have a children's education area where we have people teaching about the endocannabinoid system on the simplest of terms, where it's also designed for adults that need to learn. But in the inside, we'll allow them to come in and sit in all the panels and participate in that too.
That's awesome. So I got a question for you guys. Anybody can jump in. When you first knew that you wanted to do this, how'd you come up with EndoSesh? And then, like for Tiffany, how'd you come up with the name for your brand? And then as you are branding yourself, I mean, what do you go through that process of seeing where you want to be and then naming it based upon where you want to be? Or talk about it, Carolyn, Tiffany, Jose, share with the audience.
Sure. I'm happy to jump in. Shoki is a name that resonated with me personally. I think a lot of founders who start companies, their logo brands, their trademarks are usually tied to the experience of what they're trying to offer. And at the same time, sometimes lends itself to how they even got to the idea in the first place. So Shoki Spirits actually stands for demon killer in Japanese. And Shoki, from the West African lens, is actually a dance. So if you're into Afro beats, you know the name very, very well. There are over 100 different underground brands all over West Africa that offer really interesting cannabis beverages. Of course, again, isn't very different that many of the states have been underground for the better part of 50 years. And the communities that thrive nationwide in the US. So much of that really lends itself to the name for us. With that said, when you're developing a brand overall, it should be reflective of what you stand for, what you offer, and it should be clear. I do believe in abstracts and art, but it should be able to to connect. And with that, if your logo or your idea doesn't quite make sense, or is it not plain language, then you have to really spend a lot of time building the narrative and communicating that narrative effectively to your base. That way they can connect with the brand. So there's ways to do it all around, but you should definitely be bought into it, get it yourself first so that we can explain it to someone else. And don't be a copycat. Follow what you do. In the cannabis space, it's really burgeoning. It's so much happening. By all means, just find your unique vibe and roll with it. If it doesn't exist yet, this is the wild, wild green west. At the end of the day, you'll find your tribe, So that's my one little piece of advice.
Exactly.
The copycatting and stuff, I see a lot already. And in the big side of things, when you're thinking about where these brands are going and where this industry is going, branding is going to be it. Branding will be king. And that lends itself to the bigger markets, staying competitive. And I'm not saying there won't be space for the craft aspects, because I do believe in craft, all things, whether it's food, beverage, alike, but the bigger brands and making your mark really is going to matter in the narrative for sure.
Absolutely. Carolyn, what was you thought big off the top, like I'm going to make this. When you were thinking about names, where did they come from?
So I'm not really that creative. But DC is home to the National Book Festival and the National Folklife Festival and the National Jazz Festival and National Wine Festival. I was like, we need a National Cannabis Festival. And to tell you the truth, the first attempt at putting on the National Cannabis Festival involved me throwing in an application to hold it on the National Mall. So I was like, obviously it has to be called the National Cannabis Festival.
Right.
It became apparent to me pretty fast that that might not be the friendliest place to throw it right now with current federal prohibitions. So we'll wait a few more years. But the goal is to bring the National Cannabis Festival eventually to the National Mall.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so the one for this year is going to be at RFK Stadium, correct?
We're at RFK Stadium for year 4, yeah.
You know, I oftentimes when I work with my clients, because I get clients who have different, products, or in your cases, you guys have events and so on. And, I made a mistake early on with my event, Art 420. When we came up with the idea and we thought about, okay, well, who are we targeting? Who is our client? We were like, everybody. Everybody loves art. Everybody loves cannabis. Everybody is our target market. Everybody's going to come and we're going to sell out, and, it's going to be crazy. That was my thought process. I very quickly learned in that first year that everybody was not my client, and that even if people supported what I did, they would go on, register for a ticket, and not show up. So my question is, how did you guys determine who your particular market was? Who was your customer? Who was going to be the person that came to your business? And what did that process look like for you guys?
I can jump in there just to kind of tie in the name and where it came from. EndoSesh, we kind of use two slang. Endo coming from endocannabinoid system on the medical side of things. Sesh from session on the recreational side of things. So as far as who we were targeting, it was pretty much the people that understood that concept. If that explains it at all. It's not the people that are expecting to come and have a big smoke out, and things going on like that. It's not people that are expecting to sit in a conference hall all day and just listen to somebody speak in a monotone voice. It's a kind of combination of both. So that's really who we're targeting, is the people that are in the know. Because there are so many people that are in the know right now that don't know. They know that, medical cannabis is legal, but they don't know the first steps to, I can go see this doctor, or there's a dispensary in town. They don't know these steps. So that's who we're targeting.
Are you guys at a point where you're starting to look for investors or looking for funding that comes from outside of just sponsors to maybe expand the breadth and depth of where you want to go with this?
Eventually that may be something. We've been fortunate not only to have great partners and sponsors, but like I said, coming from the background I come from, I'm very well connected in the entertainment world. So having access to venues and places like festival grounds, that's been a great benefit. So as far as what we see in our future and continuing to make EndoSesh into an event where it's, for industry folks, we don't foresee ourselves finding or needing investment for that. Not that we're shutting that down or anything, but in our foreseeable plan, we do. Yeah.
What about you, Carolyn?
So I think right now we're just laser focused on the next 20 some days until all of our we actually start on April 12th, so we have like 9 straight days of events. I don't know. I think all of us who have been working in this space for a couple of years now, that month to month, everything changes in the industry, and working in the live event space, they're live events. You never know what's going to happen. So we'll get through this year's festival and reassess this summer. But we're really fortunate to have had a great, strong team carry us this far.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And then, and Tiffany, yes, ma'am.
For sure. From the grassroots angle, when the same vibes we use when thinking of consumption, start low, go slow. Same aspect when you're trying to build momentum, build relationship, as well as, share the brand with others around you. It's important to really make relationships. So the same way, Roz, you and I are connected through the M4MM. There's wonderful organizations that are really focused on the education. That's a really great way to make connections, get people introduced to you, introduced to what you're selling, what you're offering, and of course, the exchange of ideas. I'm a firm believer in education across the board. And yes, it comes from the lens of the wine lens. You become a more educated consumer, you buy better wine, right? So same thing across the cannabis experience. The more you learn about how it can really impact your life, the more you align yourself with brands that care as much as you do. And I think that's, as consumers naturally become more educated as we get, as markets mature. And so that's along the lines of creating a relationship with people and offering something that they can't get anywhere else. And for cannabis right now, it's really education. And coming from people that look like you, talk like you, right. Come from where you come from is a real added benefit and also competitive edge, frankly.
Right, exactly. So Carolyn, and then E, I want you to come in on this too, because you are talking about planning an event, Eric Range, and and you did an event. But Carolyn, when you did, let's talk about last year for the festival. I heard there were lines like long. I mean, tell them, like, do you have volunteers? I mean, your planning of this, do you have like downtime where you, after it's done, you can kind of rest and then you start ramping up again? Is it a cyclical or, I mean, and don't give away the secret sauce. So
no, it's a full year planning process. We never stop. Okay. So it takes us a full year to close things out and then we start over again immediately. We have a great team. We have great groups of volunteers. Last year we had a really good problem to have, I guess, for any producer. It was just a bit of a surprise. The event sold out and we were like, oh, that's unexpected. So we were in real time working with the venue to assess how many more tickets we could open up, which we did, which is how that epic line formed. It was intense. But what was cool and what was amazing. Oh, I was going to say what's amazing about the cannabis community is I hear that the line was a lot of fun. People were like making friends, talking, and it was moving. So, but yeah, we have like list attendees and like the best fans in DC. And we're really excited to have people coming from out of town like you guys to help increase that vibe.
Absolutely. So disclaimer for everyone, it was a long line, but I heard it was a fun line and that people were patient. It wasn't crazy, but it was one of those things where you're like, I was told, Roz, get there early because you don't want to wait in line. So you create this kind of anticipation and people are excited. And again, just knowing that the vision as a woman of color and looking at this and how you produce something and producing it with excellence, that you want to strive for excellence. God bless you in what you're doing. I know when you talk about this, I mean, yourself in event planning, there's no shutdown. It's kind of year round, correct?
I mean, it is one of the things that people, it's funny because somebody in the comments on Facebook mentioned the whole Fire Festival. I don't know if you guys have seen that documentary, but you should go check it out if you haven't seen it. And it highlighted, I think, for a lot of people, how sometimes you have a great idea for an event, but if you've never really run an event, you've never planned it, I mean, there's so much that could go wrong. Just in the planning piece, there's so much that can go wrong. And then you think about, the day of, so many other things that can go wrong, and you having to be able to be flexible, having to be able to respond to the simplest of things. I mean, I remember when we did Art 420 and Art Basel, my biggest day where I expected the largest crowd, it happened to rain. And even though we were an indoor event, it completely killed our attendance on that day. And so you have to, I had vendors who were going to be set up outside and, the whole nine. And we had to scramble to figure out, okay, how do I fit these 15 vendors who are going to be outside now inside and not take away from the art space and not, it's so many things that you have to contend with when it comes to planning events. It's always important to have a good team. Always important to remember that you cannot do it all by yourself. I think you dream big, you set up the infrastructure for things to go right, and you plan for that. But, recognizing that event management and running events is just not something that is for the faint of heart. Long nights, early mornings. I tell you, there were times where I didn't sleep for 48 hours straight, and that's just one of those things you have to be prepared for. I mean, and I'm sure each one of our
Jose
guests have dealt with that.
and Carolyn are like, you raise your
Yeah.
hand. I'm sure. I'm sure.
But it teaches you to dig deep. It teaches you the next time around to, kind of tweak what you promise to give people. Because I'm one of those people, I'm a stickler. If I say I'm going to give you X, Y, Z, or my doors will be open at this time, like I believe in doing whatever at all costs to make sure that I deliver on whatever promises I've given. And sometimes you back yourself into a corner that you wish you hadn't, but that's a part of it, and to that point, I like everybody, because I know we got a few people who are, listening right now, who are planning their events, and, there's a lot that you can never anticipate. So each one of you guys, tell us, what was your craziest experience that you had to respond to, maybe on the day of or even beforehand, and what did you do, or how did you respond?
I got a good one, actually. So for those entrepreneurs out there who are daring, it doesn't hurt sometimes, depending who you partner with, to invade a conference or two. And by invasion, I mean that very, very friendly, in a sense of, you may not be on the immediate roster, you may not be on the planned or scheduled events for that particular place, but if you say have a 50-person max capacity space for, say, conversation, networking, and then you actually partner with a few folks who are attending who are high profile, you can have a really nice ancillary event parallel to the program. So Shoki Spirits was at MJ Biz Daily. Don't tell anybody. Well, now it's out the bag. And we had a really great event with the help and co-hosts of a few cannabis influencers while the conference was going on in the evening hours. And we were able to pull a really awesome draw and partner with a few other brands that are up and coming and people of color who came out of California. And it was a way to get really good exposure for the event. The crazy part was we were having a networking event, but there was also consumption on site. And so you had all these like black jackets running into the space saying, what's going on here? What's happening? I have never seen 5 vendors, including Shoki Spirits, pack up so fast to get moving and then to set up again the very next night. So I will say that at the end of the day, if you got some, you've got some gumption in you, it can go a long way, and you might get the win-win there was that it was a really great way to really connect with parts of the market in cannabis, because our influencers were TBI representatives. So that's traumatic brain injury folks. And so there were, it was aspects of being able to be a part of a new sub-community of the cannabis space. But in addition to that, got a little bit of trouble, but we were known as a party that got shut down because it was that live.
And I was there.
And I
was there.
The founder almost went to jail, but don't do that part.
She did.
But
it was a good party.
It was Roz, you were there.
I was there.
I
saw them when they walked in. So listen, I'm starting to interrupt you. So I saw the black jackets when they walked in. I was like, oh crap. I was like, okay, it's time to go. And it was consumption everywhere outside, because it was a hotel, beautiful hotel with a wraparound balcony overlooking Las Vegas. It was great sampling. I mean, you are in an adult use city, so you're thinking we're good. And yes, and everybody was trying to get upstairs to get to and that's the beautiful part about MJ Biz. I mean, you will find so many events and networking things off-site that give you an opportunity to basically partner with, folks and then you come and you're able to get your brand out there. So I was there, and it was a good party, and thank goodness that it ended well, and so going from there. But anyway.
So Carolyn, tell us about one of your craziest experiences. You throw a very large event, and I have to anticipate, expect that you deal with quite a bit.
I don't know where to begin. I think year one was one long crazy experience, because nobody knew what to expect. So the anxiety for everybody was very high. But I think one of the funniest things that has started happening, and I really don't want to encourage this, But some really innovative festival attendees, I realized last year, were coming to the site the week before we started building and burying things to retrieve on the festival day. I don't know what was buried. I just know that we would find these little like pock marks on the like lawn that people had been making. Now I've heard about this happening at other festivals with like liquor. I really think this might have been like large glass pieces, or I don't even know what. But yeah, people, and we have some people that try and sneak onto the grounds early every year. So that's become like a challenge that we have to deal with. They don't do anything bad, but it's a little kind of scary when you walk into a site that is dark and supposed to be empty, and there's like a nice, friendly community member just smoking a joint alone in a tent, and you're like, hey, like, how did you get?
Yeah. I had that happen at Art 420 and Art Basel. Someone literally slept outside of the gallery the night before, and we came up the next morning and he was just there. Like, I mean, on one hand, you're excited, like, wow, somebody's that committed to come to my event. On the other hand, you're like, whoa.
Well, no, we have a really dedicated group of first in liners now, which is really sweet. So they come with their chairs. I'm still not sure what time they arrive. Just know that by 9 a.m. they're all sitting there, and it's like, what time did you get up? And are you the same guy just kicked out of the tent over there? But no, it's a lot of fun. We have like a really good-natured community. So
yeah, that's awesome. And what about you, Jose? Any crazy experiences in planning?
I'm over here racking my brain. I really wish I have a story, and I really hate that now probably I'm going to get a story this year because I don't have a story.
So you have to come back on and let us know about that.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could say from my end to not get the crazies on my end as someone that's throwing the event is that I try as much as possible. I mean, obviously a week leading out, everything mechanically, logistically should be running smooth and ready to go. But I try to get into a zone that last week. And just, it's a meditation for that whole week. And you have to put yourself in that space, in that zone, ready to be able to move. And I don't know, maybe, hopefully I won't have a story this year, but we've been fortunate not to have, over the last year and a half doing events, doing Endo Sesh. This will be our second year, but we've done other little comedy events and like video game meetups for patients and things like that. But we haven't had anything unique or too wild happen yet.
That's good. Well, we hope that nothing too eventful happens. Hey,
so let me interrupt you right quick, guys. I'm gonna interrupt you guys. I have to catch a plane to St. Louis. I've been traveling all week and I'm headed to St. Louis. I'll be getting out of here early. I appreciate you guys so much. Well, I got a last question, and then Eric will wrap us up. I want to kind of ask you guys, when you're working with nonprofits and being able to have some of your benefit or some of your proceeds benefit nonprofits, what are some of the nonprofits you look for? And I'm grateful for Tiffany. She's actually reached out to M4MM as her nonprofit of choice to be a benefactor. So again, what have you looked for, and how important it is for it to have that connectivity to a nonprofit that's doing great work out there?
I can speak for myself. Traction is really important. I look for organizations that have really, put their feet behind their mission. And they may not have 1 million members. That's not the goal. It's more so about how much outreach do they do? Are they really taking the time to send and create that narrative? I'm a narrative person. Like I live by that. The story is really what sells with people. And have you used your platform to educate? Are folks walking away from your programs better than when they walked out? Better than when they walked in? I think that for me is when I'm looking for groups to partner with is the most important thing. I can't say this enough, education's key, even when you're, again, a wine consumer. So imagine cannabis being a so much more sophisticated, a natural plant product. So it's just really important to have an organization that really cares about what they're doing, are getting out there, because it's not easy, And again, they're not just sitting there, making phone calls, asking for checks. It's really about standing behind their mission, being busy with that. I appreciate that I couldn't get to you, Roz, for about 2 weeks. I like that. I have to really reach out and that's honestly a nod to how busy the group is. MM4M is doing amazing things across the country, and to be a part of that in any capacity means a lot. And again, serving the communities that, again, look like us, talk like us, and have, again, historically been underserved, need these representatives, need these voices. And if we can help propel those voices and get them further out, that's the goal in groups like that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Carolyn, same question, because you have a large nonprofit section of your festival.
We do. We have 32 advocates, or 33, because now Minorities for Medical Marijuana is joining. So we have 33 nonprofit partners that exhibit for free on the festival site. We give those groups also 10 tickets apiece, so there are like hundreds of tickets, which makes us happy to know that we have all of these really informed activists on our site every year. But on top of that, we do some giving throughout the year. We try and support direct service organizations in Washington, D.C. that are working directly with communities in need. So maybe they're doing homelessness outreach, or working with folks who are in the sex industry in our city. So we work, for instance, with HIPs in DC. They do some amazing work in our city. And then throughout the year, we also do give back to our nonprofit partners when they have events that are coming up. If we have the funds available, we try to find different ways to support. So I think in the past, we've given to DCMJ, Drug Policy Alliance, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, MCBA. And this year, we're really excited to be giving some of our ticket proceeds to some of the local direct service organizations in our city. But it's exciting to give back.
Thank you, and blessings for that. Jose, same question.
Yeah, so this year we have about 10 partners in the nonprofit sector. We also are going out to the local nonprofits that are related to cannabis. So, for example, the Epilepsy Society, places like Haven Hospice, places where traditionally you might not expect to see them with cannabis. So we're at least approaching those nonprofits, making the issue become aware to them, offering them a space at the festival. We're also, there's a couple fundraising efforts that are going on during the event. So we kind of stay involved that way.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for what you do. Eric, I'm gonna let you close it up. I appreciate you. I am only a phone call away. We thank you for the support and the love that you give to the organization, and just kudos to you, and best of luck for the events that are coming up. Make sure we get pictures, tag us on it, share with us, or what have you. Words can't tell you how much I'm super just stoked with what you're doing. This is people of color, guys. These are folks that come from backgrounds that, you don't have everything. You just take the grit, you take the vision, and you create, and God bless everybody. So thank you. And I'll see you guys. I'm off to St. Louis.
All right. Safe travels, Roz. We'll talk soon. Ladies and gentlemen, as y'all know, Roz and I, we keep it moving. We are all over the country doing great work, but it's important, for each of our guests. I thank you guys for what you're doing to support nonprofits. Roz and I can tell you how much of what we've done over the past few years has really been on a shoestring budget, trying to get things done. So we rely on folks like yourselves that support the work that we're doing, when it is a local event or a smaller event, and you guys support us, and even through marketing and, putting our name out there, those things really mean the difference for us. So I appreciate that. I got to go back to this whole fire thing. I don't know. I was absolutely fascinated just watching it, because as an event planner, so many times I was just like, you got to pull the plug, give these people back their money, end it. But, they didn't. And I was just, blown away by it. Now, from a standpoint of communicating with your customers, your clients, your guests, how important that is for each of you? And tell me some of the things that you guys do in order to actually, make sure that your guests know what to expect, the moment they arrive. Tell us that process. I know for me, I sit down and, before I even begin, putting out tickets, I sit down and I go through from the customer standpoint, what's going to happen when they, get in their car from their home to the time they enter the gate to the time they go home. And so talk about that process, a little bit. And I know we're coming up on the end, but I want you guys to talk about, how you communicate with your customers.
Real quick, I can jump in. Just I do a press release about 3 weeks out. I send it to all media outlets and all of our social media. So that's kind of a way we let everyone know quick and easy what's going on. That's kind of the simple way we do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are, so again, marketing being a really important aspect of any brand that's growing, building. From the time a customer walks into their first taste to their first educational conversation, we have people positioned in the room to answer questions. Upon entry, there's someone there to welcome you with a warm smile, some hot food. We're foodies in this group, so our events are always covered in food, whether it's made in-house, depending on where we have the space. Sometimes we can partner with a chef or so. Again, always food, but an opportunity to really capture their information. So, word of mouth, building a database is important. Those press releases only work if you have someone to send them to. And so much like my fellow panelists can talk to, it's important to really get their phone numbers and their contact information, their interests. Hey, do you care more about learning about CBN versus CBD? Do you know what THCVA is? All the things. And then from there, we use that to curate programs, to curate education in a very intimate environment. And then partner with other groups who, again, may already have membership, but that's how the event aspect for us goes. And then toward the end of the event, to make sure that when they leave, they again walk out with something, whether it's a little card about some great program happening next month with another organization, or whether or not it's some really great takeaway. We have these great wings, these shoki wings, as I like to call them. I may trademark that too, only because they're amazing, and you always make sure folks get a cute little baggie for the road, for obvious reasons.
Absolutely.
Well, for National Cannabis Festival, and I think for all cannabis events, there's a lot of responsibility on event producers to really carefully message what is happening at their event, what can happen and what can't happen. I think that we all know that when we're doing events really on any scale, especially when we are reaching out to the press, we have their attention, and it means that the good stuff will get covered, but the bad stuff will get amplified. So we are very serious about making sure that we communicate the DC law to our guests, which can be a bit confusing for people. We repeat all of that not only on social media, but through our newsletters, our email blasts, all of our platforms. And then on the festival day, we make sure that we have a lot of signage out. One of the great things about having our advocacy partners on site is they sort of act like a great middleman between, the harsh realities and difficulties with our laws and a lot of our visitors from outside the city that may not really understand the complexities. So someone might walk up to you and be like, hey, you might not want to do that right here for the following reasons. So that's been really great. But we try and ask our exhibitors, our advocacy committee members, our internal security team, and everyone to really be aware of the local laws and to help us talk to people when they come in to keep everybody safe. And we've never had an arrest or any issue at National Cannabis Festival. So knock on wood, that stays true for year 4.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Now we're coming up to the last couple minutes, but I do have one more question before I ask each of you to tell folks where they can find you, where they can get tickets for your events, and how they can connect with you. But the last question I have for you is, when do you say it's time to pull the plug? When is it, it's, I guess the 19th hour and whatever. When do you guys, or do you have a system in place of saying, if we haven't done certain things, we're going to pull the plug?
So for us, I would not get to the 19th hour for us. That would really be the wrong thing to do to our sponsors and our attendees. We have financial milestones that we have to hit. And if we were to not hit one and not find a good workaround for being able to make things work, we would start considering how to draw back the event and pull the plug.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else want to answer that?
For the grassroots, smaller programs, you should really know about a week out whether or not you'll be able to cover your costs. To everyone else who's echoed, at the end of the day, programs are expensive. They're an expensive investment into your brand and your brand experience. So if you're not going to be able to break even, those are things you should know up front. And as soon as you realize that, and/or the venue is no longer safe, you can no longer offer what you promise. That is one of the utmost things to do. Make sure you stay client-centric. Knowing what you've offered, living up to the promises that you have is really, really important. And also to build trust. Trust is ultimately the greatest asset you'll have as a brand owner, as a business person, as an experienced curator, all the fun jazzy words out there for event planning, all the things. You really have to stand by your promise and what you offer. And safety, to everyone else's points, it's of the utmost importance. Is a venue still secure? Can you allow people for safe consumption? Are those things even available in that particular state? Being able to live up to that is important. The minute you realize you can't, which should be approximately 7 to at least 10 days out before an intimate program, 20, 30 people showing up to a week before the event, offering a full refund with an explanation why, beyond, your control of certain things, it may hurt in the short term, but in the long term, at least you communicated something. But again, if you've planned right, budgeted right, and marketed in the right way, you should at least be able to break even on your programs. You shouldn't be looking for huge profits, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And Jose, if you can, if you want to add anything, or if you don't, that's fine. But if you start us off and let us know where they can find tickets.
Yeah, we don't too much have a jump out plan. Like I said, I have a unique situation where I've been kind of doing events since I was, a teenager. So, if something were to happen, obviously you would want to take care of your sponsors first and foremost. Any of your promotional partners, make sure you communicate with them. There should be communication all the time from the beginning to the end, either way. But you can find us at EndoSesh on EndoSesh 2019 on Facebook if you need any information for the event. You can also find us at www.greenwise.tv, and that's where you can find our content, like our cooking shows, our interview shows, and all our educational content that we produce right here in Gainesville, Florida.
Absolutely. All right. And, Tiffany, go ahead. Tell us where we can get tickets to your event as well.
For sure. So showkeyspirits.com is where you can find information about our flavors, about the type of products we offer. In addition, if you want to find out more about our events in your area, Tribe Events at showkeyspirits.com. Requests to be added to the list. And you'll start getting emails from us almost immediately regarding what's going on in your area. And I'm going to put that email address in the chat room right now.
Okay, perfect. And of course, Caroline, tell us about the National Cannabis Festival.
So you can find tickets to National Cannabis Festival at nationalcannabisfestival.com. And you can also register for the National Cannabis Policy Summit, which takes place the day prior to the festival. At the festival website, just click on our advocacy link and you'll find the policy summit there. The summit is free to attend. So the policy summit is on April 19th. It is free to attend. And the festival is the following day on April the 20th. So you can find all that at nationalcannabisfestival.com.
All right. Well, I thank each of our guests. You guys are amazing. You're putting on amazing events for 420. I wish I had a clone so I could be at every last one of them. But I definitely, if you are in the area and you know of one of these events going on, please go out and support, get plugged into the community and so on. Charles, you have anything you want to add really quick before we hop off?
No, this has been great. I'm excited to go to one of these events coming up next month. So
absolutely. You got a lot to choose from, brother. That's a hard decision. And please know if we don't attend one over the other, there's no love lost. We'll be at yours the next year, okay? For everybody who's listening, again, I thank you all for taking time out each week to join us here on Canna Talk with Roz. I'm your co-host, Eric Range. Take some time this weekend, as usual. Love on your family. Get some rest so we can hit the ground running next week. Thank you again, and we'll see you all.
Thank you.